Well, it is 9 o'clock, and I want to make sure we honor your time. I know you're, it's a, gonna, it's always busy in the health room, isn't it? So, so thank you for coming today. This is our May school nurse regional update and our last one of the 23-24 school year. So, kudos to everyone um, for all your hard work, and we appreciate everything that you do. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to support you in your work with your students. And thank you for being here with us this morning. We have, so this morning we'll have an update on diabetes technology, um, the latest info, and PDA, how to navigate the PDA landscape with your students that need to have those in schools. And then after, and that will be with Maddie she's a diabetes educator with Confluence Health, and I saw her come into the meeting earlier. So, Maddie, thank you for being with us this morning. After Maddie is done and you have your questions answered, we can move on. We'll move on to Kathy, and she will give us our state and regional school nurse updates. And after Kathy is done at 10 or around 10 anyway, we will move into our regional health update with Dr. Wallace and our wildfire smoke update and preparedness information with Dr. Liz Walker from the Chelan Douglas Health District. I put them for the entire hour because we want to make sure we give you plenty of time to ask questions. And they're going to be Dr. Wallace and Dr. Walker are going to just be able to move from one subject to the other. So, but wanted to just put that out there that they are um, back to back in that 10 o'clock hour. So the objective for this meeting is to become updated or to receive updated information on resources, practices, or opportunities that we can utilize in our support of maintaining student health and safety. And the goal, as always, is to identify resources that you can use in supporting your students. And then I have the framework columns down there. So just a reminder to everyone that this meeting is recorded, so please keep your microphones muted. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them in the chat. Sheila and I monitor the chat so we can make sure your questions get answered. If you don't want to put them in the chat, you're always welcome to raise your hand to make a question or ask a question or make a comment. Again, these updates have clock hours attached to them, and you can receive clock hours by attending this live Zoom or watching the recording, filling out the survey to let us know that you've watched it, and then PD Enroller will send you a survey to complete the process. Um, and if you have any questions, please reach out to myself or to Sheila, and we can help guide you through that too. So, um, without further ado, I'm going to turn the time over um, to Maddie with Confluence Health so she can share that diabetes information with us.
Okay, thank you. Can you guys see my screen? I think I was able to start sharing it.
Yep, we can see your screen. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So I'm Maddie. I'm the diabetes educator with Confluence Health, dietitian by trade. And today I just wanted to cover let me see what this says. And today I just wanted to cover a brief overview of all of the diabetes technology that you guys might run into during the school year. So kind of starting right off the bat with the continuous glucose monitor. So the continuous glucose monitor is a wearable technology that's going to provide real-time and predictive blood sugar data. Sensor readings and predicted trend arrows, they're updated every 5 minutes for you guys. And the sensor reading can be used to make insulin dosing decisions. How many of you guys have seen your students wearing the continuous glucose monitor? Okay, so 3 students with the continuous glucose monitor. They're pretty popular. We do have 2 new ones out on the market. You guys may have seen them cycle through this past year. So with the continuous glucose monitor, there are 3 components to it. So there's the sensor, which is what is reading the blood sugar reading in the interstitial fluid of the body. There's the transmitter, which sits on the outside of the skin. That's the object that you see that students, that's what sends the blood sugar reading to the receiver. And then the student will have a receiver, cell phone app, or even an insulin pump that displays that blood sugar reading for you guys. One thing I always like to just point out about continuous glucose monitors is they are never going to read the same as a blood sugar reading. So if you compare a CGM reading to a glucometer, very rarely will they be the same or even about 10 points away from each other. The reason for that is the sensor on the continuous glucose monitor, that's reading the sugar that's in the interstitial fluid of the body. Whereas when you do a glucometer check, that's reading the amount of sugar that's in the bloodstream of the body. This becomes really important when we're treating for low blood sugars. So if a student has signs or symptoms, or they get an alert that their blood sugar is low, we do the treatment. We want to always verify that the blood sugar has come back up using the glucometer versus the CGM, because there will be a delay on how that sugar travels from the blood into the interstitial fluid of the body. I always like the image on the right side where it's like that roller coaster ride. So we'll always see blood sugar go up first in the bloodstream, and then the sensor glucose reading kind of follows back behind that, usually about a 10 to 20-minute delay. When the student, or if the student doesn't have the signs or symptoms that match the continuous glucose monitor sensor reading, that's a good time to just grab the glucometer, verify that the reading is correct. And also, if there is no sensor reading or trend arrow, you will want to make sure you verify with the glucometer before making any insulin dosing decisions. So talking about our different continuous glucose monitors on the market. So we have our Dexcom G6 and Dexcom G7. These are the most popular ones that we see with students. These are the Dexcoms have very good compatibility with insulin pump therapy, which also makes them really popular. The nice thing about the Dexcom is that it does have a Dexcom Follow app. And I know a lot of school nurses from doing the PDA trainings that they have access to that Follow app, so they can be alerted of those alerts if the sugar's high or if it's too low. One thing to keep in mind with the Dexcom G6, if that does fall off during the school day, there is a reusable transmitter that sits inside of the sensor. So you never want to throw the whole Dexcom away. Just put it in a baggie for the parents to get. That's a really hefty piece of equipment and costs about $200 to $300 to replace. So if the student brings it to you, it's fallen off during the day, just place it in a baggie for that parent to have at a later time. The Dexcom trend arrows look very similar to this. When you're looking at the Dexcom receiver or phone app, you'll see these trend arrows with a blood sugar level or value inside of the trend arrows. These trend arrows can provide a lot of information. especially if the student is predicted to have a low blood sugar. So if you see that the very bottom one there, glucose could increase or decrease more than 90 milligrams per deciliter in 30 minutes. So keeping in mind, if we're about to dose insulin, the student is maybe in the 80s or 90s with a double arrow pointed down, we may need to make some adjustments there to how much insulin is going to be given. And keep in mind the trend arrows and the sensor readings, those are updated every 5 minutes for you guys. Our next one is the Freestyle Libre 3. So if you're familiar with the Freestyle Libres, previously you would need to scan the sensor to be able to see a blood sugar reading. With the Freestyle Libre 3, you no longer have to do that. The main thing to keep in mind with the Freestyle Libre 3 is if you see that symbol, the magnifying glass with a blood droplet, that is asking you to verify what the blood sugar is using a glucometer before making any treatment decisions. And then you also do get those trend arrows as well with the Freestyle Libre 3. And then we have the Medtronic Guardian 4, and we don't commonly see patients or students or patients using the Guardian 4 independent of an insulin pump, but I did add it in here because the Medtronic has released their new insulin pump and it's definitely coming onto the market really quickly. So I want you guys to be aware of that Guardian 4, which is the Medtronic sensor. With the Guardian 4, just like the Dexcom 6, it does have a reusable piece. So once again, if the sensor does fall off during the school day, we don't want to dispose of that. We want to put it in a baggie and give it off to parents. So that way we don't lose that reusable transmitter piece. The Guardian 4 is available to be seen. You can see those sensor readings either using an insulin pump or a cell phone app, which would be the MiniMed mobile app. Any questions over those continuous glucose monitors? I know people are pretty familiar with these guys. I can see that we have a lot of students using them. And then I also see that we have a student on a bionic insulin pump, which we will talk about. That's one of the newest pumps out on the market. Okay. So with insulin pump therapy, an insulin pump is a wearable device that delivers continuous and customized doses of rapid acting insulin 24 hours a day to match the body's needs. It's important to remember that the insulin pump only uses, or people using an insulin pump only use rapid acting insulin. So if the infusion site on the insulin pump gets pulled off, they have no long acting insulin in their system. They're going to need to get that infusion site replaced fairly quickly. The insulin pump delivers insulin in two different fashions. So you have the basal or the background insulin. This is a small amount of insulin that is released continuously throughout the day. And that's pictured in the upper image there. So it's a really continuous rate of insulin delivery. That basal rate is what makes up for your students not taking the long-acting insulin. And then we have our bolus or our mealtime insulin, which is the additional insulin that can be delivered on demand to match food intake or to correct for high blood sugars. And that's shown in the bottom image there. So you have basal insulin that's running 24 hours a day. And then we have our bolus, which is kind of self-induced. It's what we tell the pump to deliver to the student, or the student tells the pump to deliver. All of our insulin pumps can work in a hybrid closed loop fashion, just meaning that the insulin pump is working alongside the continuous glucose monitor to really mimic how a pancreas would typically work. So in the image to the right side, what it does is you set up a target blood sugar level. And as the student's blood sugars start to decrease or drop away from that target, the insulin delivery follows. So it'll start to decrease or even stop all delivery to protect against those low blood sugars. As blood sugar starts to go back up, you'll see that the insulin delivery also starts to go back up, and then it even increases to help get them back down to that target. And then that's what that loop is, that closed loop is happening every 5 minutes. So every time that continuous glucose monitor gives an updated reading, the insulin pump then will adjust the insulin delivery to better match what the student needs at that moment. The Omnipod 5 with the Dexcom G6 is probably one of the more common ones we see with students, just because it is a tubeless insulin pump. So you can see that it uses an app or a controller that controls the pod, and then that pod is in constant feedback with the Dexcom G6, which then the pod is making those dosing adjustments based on what the Dexcom is telling the blood sugar is. With the Omnipod 5, one thing to keep in mind is it does not provide any auto corrections. It's actually the only pump out on the market that doesn't do auto corrections. So if the student's blood sugar is running high, you do have to go in and tell the controller that the student's blood sugar is running high and to give that bolus of insulin. It will be compatible with the Dexcom G7 within the next few months. So you may see your students switching from the Dexcom G6 to the 7 at that point. On the right side of the screen, I did show you what that bolus calculator looks like. So you can input the carbohydrates into that carb field. So how many carbs the student is eating. Then what we do recommend is where you see the use sensor. We recommend that you hit that versus typing in what the student's glucose is. The reason that we recommend hitting the use sensor is because that will also pull the trend arrow in and make additional insulin adjustments based on where the sugar is actually going in that moment versus just what that blood sugar is for you. Once you have both the carbs and the blood sugar into the controller, you would hit the confirm button down in the lower right-hand corner, and then that would initiate the release of insulin for you guys. The Tandem or T-Slim X2, I know that there are some students out there using this one. It's compatible with the Dexcom 6, Dexcom 7, and then the Freestyle Libre 2 Plus. It does have that tubing and that infusion site. Most students probably wear it on their abdomen just because that tubing can kind of get pulled if we feed it up through the shirt. With the tandem insulin pump, it's working in the background to control that basal rate based on where blood sugars are going. And it always is looking 30 minutes ahead of time. So if in 30 minutes it predicts that the student is going to be low, it will stop all insulin delivery. If in 30 minutes it predicts they're going to be high, it may increase or even give an auto correction up to once an hour. So for students using the tandem insulin pump, it's really nice because you don't have to be giving those auto corrections. If you notice the student's blood sugar is high, the pump is going to be automatically doing that without beeping or alarming at you guys. You do, with the tandem pump, still have to go into that bolus calculator by hitting that bolus button on the bottom of the screen, and then enter in the amount of carbs the student is eating. As long as the student has the CGM active and connected with the pump, it will automatically feed in the blood sugar reading for you guys. Tandem's newest insulin pump is the Tandem Mobi, and it's compatible with the Dexcom G6. The Mobi is a very small insulin pump. You can see there's no screen on it. It is supposed to kind of mimic what the Omnipod is like. So there is still a small tubing, and the student can choose from a 5-inch tubing, or they can do the 23 standard inch tubing if they want. But the Mobi is completely controlled through a smartphone app. It works, the algorithm in the Mobi is the same as the algorithm in the T Slim, so the pump that I just showed you guys. So it is working to control that basal rate insulin based off of blood sugars, and then it's giving that once per hour auto correction as needed. For the Tandem Mobi and the Tandem T Slim, they do have activity modes available. So if your student goes to PE every day or every other day, and you notice every time they're in PE, blood sugar drops on them, the activity mode is something that can help increase their target blood sugar for a certain duration of time. So you can ask it, set this activity mode to increase their target to 150 for 2 hours to help prevent those lows from happening. Then we have our Medtronic 780G insulin pump with the Guardian 4. So sometimes with the Guardian 4, it will ask for a calibration to be completed. So if the pump is asking for a calibration, you will need to poke the student's finger using their glucometer and then plug that blood sugar into the pump to keep the pump in what we call the Smart Adjust technology. The Smart Adjust technology in the Medtronic pump, this one is working to control the basal rate, just like the other pumps are doing, but it can do an auto correction every 5 minutes for the student, which we have seen with those really frequent auto corrections. It helps prevent hyperglycemia and hypoglycemia, because it does it in a very safe manner. For the student, there's such small auto corrections that we don't really see insulin stacking happen. What you will notice though, when you're in that bolus, they call their calculator the bolus wizard. So when you're inputting the carbohydrates in there, the blood sugar will automatically populate from the sensor reading. And depending on previously given auto corrections, there may be an adjustment made. So you may see a decreased bolus amount because the pump has been working to control those blood sugars in the background. The Medtronic pump does have the lowest target blood sugars that you can set. So it's 100, 110, or 120 are the targets that it works with. Most people start out in that 100 target blood sugar. And then we have the Beta Bionic iLet insulin pump. This one's a newer one on the market as well. It's compatible with the Dexcom G6 and Dexcom G7. This pump is very unique because you do not put in carbohydrates. You don't carb count with this pump, whereas all of the other pumps, you do have to estimate carbs and put that amount into the pump. With the Beta Bionic pump, what you do is you select, or they say you announce if it is breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And then you will announce if the carbs are a usual amount for you, more amount for you, or less amount for you. And that is how it makes the prediction on how much insulin to give. The Beta Bionics pump, it essentially it learns the student over time to help make those adjustments. any questions over those different insulin pumps? The Beta Bionics, the Medtronic 780G, and the Tandem Mobi, those are our newest ones to the market.
Maddie, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So what happens when a student leaves their phone at home or their phone becomes damaged and we don't have access to that app to see? I mean, does that what how would you navigate that situation?
So for the when we look at the different are you talking about the pumps if you don't have access to the app for the pumps?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. So the Beta Bionic, the Medtronic 780, and then the Tandem T Slim, those all are completely driven by the actual insulin pump itself. So you can see it on the belt there. So you can use a smartphone to give boluses for like the tandem pump, but other than that, you use the pump to be able to give those boluses at meal times and also to see the blood sugar reading. Where that may cause issues if your student's phone is damaged is with the Tandem Mobi, since that's completely ran through the smartphone. The algorithm is built into the pump itself. So if the smartphone isn't available, the student can still use the insulin pump. It's just that they wouldn't get any alerts or alarms if there was a malfunction with the pump. They wouldn't get alerts or alarms if their blood sugars are running high or low. But there is still a way to bolus for what they're going to eat using the actual pump unit itself. There is a button on the very bottom of it. It's a silver button. And if you hold that button for 5 seconds, it will then allow you to give incremental insulin dosing. This is something though, if you have a student on the Mobi, you will want to verify what their increments are set up for. So some people do it based off of carbs. So every button push is 5 grams of carbs. Some people do it based off of insulin. So every button push is 1 unit of insulin. So that's something that you would want to verify with the parents. And then also that idea, if their cell phone does become damaged, what do we want to do moving forward? Do we want to return them to injections versus have them use the pump? Is it easier to do injections with manual blood sugar checking? Does the parent need to come in and kind of troubleshoot what they want to do type situation there?
Thank
The
you.
Omnipod 5, you can use a cell phone app for this, but there is also a controller. So if the phone does become damaged, the student will have a controller at home that the parent should be able to bring in for you guys to use at that point.
Maddie, this is Kathy, and I have a question about the current versions of medical orders that are often being used and or hypo and hyperglycemia emergency care plans. I'm just curious if the plans themselves have kept up with the new technology or if we need to be looking at those documents to make sure that they're really keeping up with these current types of pumps and options for students.
I'm going to guess that the plans probably haven't kept up with the new technology. I will say though, when it comes to treating like low or high blood sugars, the pump basically is going to cushion these high or low blood sugars, but we still need to take action. If the blood sugar is low, we're still going to treat it as what the plan says. And if it's high, the nice thing about insulin pumps is they do keep track of all insulin that's been given. So if the blood sugar does go high and we try to go in and give additional insulin, it won't allow you to if we've already given plenty of insulin to control that blood sugar. but I'm guessing that the plans probably have not kept up with all the new technology being released.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And that might be when you guys are working with the parents to get that health plan kind of established for the student. If the student's on an insulin pump, I think it's good to ask the parents, what should we do in this scenario of high blood sugars? Like I mentioned with the Omnipod, there are no auto corrections with that pump. It's solely based on the basal rate increasing or decreasing, and then what you guys are telling it to deliver at meal times. All of the other pumps are giving those auto corrections to help with high blood sugars. So at that point, it may be just a discussion with parents, what should we do in this scenario? Any other questions about the insulin pumps? I think we're going to be seeing a lot more beta bionics come onto the market, especially in students, because they don't use that carb counting. It's more of just that estimate. Is it a usual carb meal for the student? Is it more or is it less? Okay. And just keep in mind, if your student is on insulin pump therapy, you always, always, always want a backup plan. So say the student changes their infusion site before coming to school. You guys do want to be aware of that, because if there starts to be high blood sugars, their infusion site might be bad and it might call for a replacement at that point. When it comes to replacing the infusion sites, you do have to be trained on that. So it will be a call to parents at that point, unless they want to train you on how to do that replacement for the student. Okay. Our last little technology here is, and then there is a slide on the Omnipod, absolutely. So the main thing to know about the Omnipod is that it does work with the Dexcom G6. It's going to be compatible with the G7 coming soon. The Omnipod only does basal insulin adjustments, just meaning it's only adjusting the background insulin that's being delivered. There's no auto corrections if sugars are running high. So if you notice the student sugars are running high, you do have to go in, input that blood sugar level, and if they're eating a meal, put those carbs in as well. And then what I also mentioned about the Omnipod is it's good to hit the use sensor button versus typing in the blood sugar level. By hitting the use sensor button, it not only brings the blood sugar in, but it also brings the trend arrow in. So if the trend arrow is pointed straight up, it'll recommend more insulin. If it's pointed straight down, it'll recommend less insulin. The main thing to also keep in mind with insulin pumps is they aren't foolproof. So if we are bolusing for a meal and we tell the pump to give way more insulin than what the student needs, there's still that risk of hypoglycemia or low blood sugars. So just being aware of what the student actually ate. I know some schools will give the insulin after the student eats to be more sure of what they ate. That's kind of a discussion with parents and when they would like you to be giving those insulin boluses for their student. But yeah, if you give too much insulin, you can't take it away. That's usually where we see the low blood sugars happen at that point. The last device here are the smart insulin pens. So the pen itself is a reusable pen that gets filled with a cartridge once it's empty. But what is really nice about these pens is they do have an app on the smartphone that has a dosing calculator for you. So you can use the dosing calculator to input the current sensor reading from the Dexcom or Freestyle Libre, or you can put in the glucometer reading. And then you can input the student's carbohydrate amount, and it will recommend how many units of insulin to give. Another thing that's really nice about the pens is once you give the injection, it does track it on the app as well. And it tracks that active insulin time to essentially not allow insulin stacking to happen at that point. Other than that, the pen works just like a normal insulin pen. There's the dial, the dose knob on the very bottom. You'll have your dose window, and then the injection button there. Any questions on the smart insulin pen? Okay. Just as a little reminder for PDAs, we do need 2 different forms on file. So we need the parents to fill out the parent designated adult form, which essentially grants the school district to find a PDA for their student. On the very bottom, you'll see if no form is on file, it's assumed that permission for a PDA has not been granted and there will be no parent designated adult for your child. So making sure we have this on file from the parent or the guardian to get that permission for a PDA to be granted to that student. And then this one is the one that is for your guys' school staff. So for the PDAs, it's the notice of intent to be a PDA. One thing to keep in mind is being a PDA is a volunteer job, and so that's where this form comes into place, is they are volunteering to serve as that PDA for that student. Are there any other questions at all? It's a lot of information to try to get through in about 25-30 minutes.
I don't see any other questions in the chat, and I'm looking to see if I see any hands raised. I'm not. Well, Maddie, we really appreciate your time with us, and if we do end up having any other questions come up, we know how to get a hold of you. So we will
Absolutely.
be
Thank you guys
sending
for
this to
having me.
you so
Yeah,
much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you guys.
Thanks, Maddie. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to turn the time over to Kathy for our regional nurse update.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. So nice to see all of you on the line this morning. We'll go through some state updates and just some regional updates here. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so once I do that, now I'm not able to see everybody. So is that looking okay?
I can see your screen.
Great, perfect, thank you. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. First of all, because this is our last meeting of the year, I just want to say a big thank you to everybody. I think it's been just another wonderful year. I know it has been for us working with all of you. And I hope that you've had the feeling that you've had a lot of successes this year, that you have made, a lot of improvements in your district this year. And I know there's also, of course, always some downsides as well, but we certainly hope that we're all able to move into the new year with a positive attitude and continuing to just, put the kids at the forefront as we, try to do the best that we can for them. This is a picture of everybody from our school nurse day event.
Kathy,
yes.
Right now we are seeing your screen, but we're seeing the launch Zoom meeting screen. So could you try resharing so we could see your slides? There we go. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me know. Okay. All right. So there's everybody who was there. Thank you again. We had a wonderful time and just love that everybody was able to attend as they could. And we hope everybody else had a nice school nurse day. So some quick updates to get through. NASN. So I know you're all familiar with the NASN framework. It's on the left-hand side of your screen. The framework for the 21st century school nursing practice has been revised. So this has taken NASN a considerable amount of work. It's taken a lot of input from school nurses on their practice and what they thought about this as a guideline for their practice. And, you know, it was created in 2016. So, you know, it has been, it's just kind of gotten outdated and really needed to have a facelift and really needed to look at what is the current practice of school nursing and how did it need to, how did the image, you know, or the framework itself need to change in order to reflect current practice. And so as of 2024, we have a new model, and it's on here on the right-hand side of your screen, and you can see the school nurse. There's many similarities to this, so we no longer are calling it Framework for 21st Century School Nursing, which seemed a bit outdated, but we continue to have the school nurse surrounding the needs of the different competencies that are still within the model, as well as keeping the family and the student at the center of our core. So this has officially launched. So there's a couple of ways that you can look at it. One of them is this full-size document, which goes through the different kind of pillars. Like if you think of it as the previous model, we again still have care coordination, quality improvement, leadership, and community and public health as our key categories for school nursing. And then this provides a little bit more information about examples of the kind of school nurse practices that you would find within that category. So this isn't really intended to be the be all end all of this, but it's not every example of all the work that school nurses do, but it does provide examples. So some of the best ways to use tools like this in your own practice, one of them is really to use it as a guide as you're discussing your role with your supervisor, who often is not a school nurse, so that you can explain your practice to them in a way that's perhaps more understandable to them when you talk about these different competencies or these different you know, activities that you're involved with. How do those align with school nursing? And so these are good visuals that you can use to display in that regard. This just shows you the different layers. So if you look at this more from a layered approach to the model, you can see that you have your standards of practice, which are still the base layer for you. And then the school nurse really is the surrounding. So you think of the school nurse's arm surrounding those standards of practice, as well as your competency categories of the 4 categories, and then again, family and school within the center. There is a nice video on this, but we're not going to play it this morning due to time. I have the link for it on your slides. You can find it on the NASN site. It will take you about 4.5 minutes to review the video, and it does take you through a nice explanation of these changes and, you know, how to implement this within your own practice. One of the key things I wanted to point out is one of these guides that is now included with the change in the model. And this is a combination of the competency and the framework together, so that you can kind of look through your school nursing scope and practice, scope and standards, and then you can compare what is it telling you in as far as competencies, how do those fit into this model. So it's just another way of looking at your practice to see, you know, where do you want to focus, what's going, you know, where do you feel strong in your own competencies as far as school nursing, where would you like to grow, and where do those competencies fit within this structure. So it's really a helpful guide, particularly for those new to school nursing, so they can kind of get a sense for what is it that the school nurse's role is really about, and what are the focus areas. So this is a good tool. It's probably about 5 pages long because there's multiple competencies here, but something you could print off and use as a guide. And then we have the links here for you. So you don't have to go searching for these. You can find the framework chart, which is the 1-page document, the competency and framework chart, which is your multiple page document. And then there's a nice article for you on these changes and how NASN went about creating the new model, the input that they received in regards to the old model and what needed to be revised. And so how did this all happen? It wasn't just, we just want to change things and, for the sake of change. It really was a planned out process, and this article is a good explanation of that. Okay, so we're going to move into some Washington DOH updates. So first of all, just some reminders that there have been some changes that are going to be taking place in 24-25 regarding immunizations. But one of the things that DOH is looking at is that they know there is not 100% compliance. As we all know, there's not 100% compliance with immunizations across the board. And they're going to be looking at this in the 24-25 school year to really try to help them as an organization identify why is it that students are not fully immunized. And so they're going to be doing things like some focus groups. They're going to be looking at schools that have very low compliance, as well as schools that have very high compliance. And they're going to be looking at what tactics are being used in these different districts and what could the Department of Health do to support this. So this isn't happening yet, but it will be coming. And so I just wanted to give you a heads up that they haven't identified which schools they'll be choosing yet, but it will be a variety of schools from across Washington state. So I would anticipate some within our region are going to be selected and that DOH will be in contact with you. So changes for 24-25, the new guide has been posted for a while, and you can find this out on, it's on the Google Drive for our school nurses at North Central ESD. It's also on the Washington DOH immunization page. So I would just encourage you to take a look at this because there have been changes and they will take effect for the 24-25 year. So here's a little quick quiz, true or false. In the 24-25 school year, a student entering 11th grade who has documentation of a Tdap at age 8 is okay to start school. So this is not a pop quiz. This is just a little kind of prompt here of the answer would be false. And the reason it's false is because some of the changes that are taking place for the school year. So this is just a little teaser to say there's some updates coming. We have opportunities for you to spend some time with Washington DOH immunization staff to go through these changes so that they're very clear of what people should be looking for in the coming year. And where you're going to find those are going to be down at the bottom of your new table under grade 7 through 11 and grade 12. You can see it circled here, and it's talking about the new Tdap requirements for students and how those are going to be measured. So changes that are coming. All right, here's another knowledge check. Immunizations, true or false? Students who are homeless under the McKinney-Vento Act can start school without immunization documentation. Let's say that's a stop. Is that true or false? McKinney-Vento students, can they start school without proof of immunization? True, right? Okay, then we go on to say, and school staff don't need to do anything else regarding their immunizations because the students can't be excluded for missing immunization records. Is that true or false? Well, it's false because kids still need to be immunized, even if they are in the McKinney-Vento program. But they that's the time when school nurses can get involved in pulling in other resources to help those students so that we can really provide the means for them in order to get their vaccinations done. So these kids should still be vaccinated, even though they're in the McKinney-Vento program. So where could you find out more about these kinds of things, changes that are coming, things to be aware of for the coming school year? Well, the webinar was done back in, I believe, March, and it was recorded. So there's an option. So you could, Catherine Graff has a nice recording recording going over the 24-25 changes. So that is an option for you if you want to watch a recording of the event. You could also see her live. So Catherine is going to be doing a live presentation on May 30th from 12 to 1. The link is here if you'd like to register for that. And it's also on the School Nurse Corps Google Drive. So you can, or calendar, you can go to the calendar for school nursing and you will find the link to register for this event on May 30th. So there's 2 opportunities there. And in general, Catherine does another program. We haven't gotten a date yet, but I would anticipate we will have another update in August, because nicely they try to ensure that there are these mechanisms throughout the summer so that people can continue to be updated, particularly for new folks who might be coming on and really have an opportunity to hear from her about immunizations for the fall. Okay, so another update. So K through 12 health and safety guide. This is from the Department of Health. I'm not sure how many of you have looked at it lately. And the reason for that is because it was last updated in 2003. So can you imagine, this is not a very current tool to be used. It has been put on the back burner for some time, and it is now being resurrected and being looked at to say, we really need to get this updated. And so there is an effort to get input from folks from across the state on what exactly should go in the K through 12 health and safety guide. And they're asking for input from people. There is a link here to a Department of Health website where you can see an example. This is a clip from the page. It says review the revised sections. You are welcome to review one section if you would like. If you're interested in any of these topics, you could review a single section and you could give them input on it. You could review multiple sections if you have an interest in these things and give the Department of Health information. The due date, though, for this is quite tight. So they're asking for input by June 15th. So not very much time, but they're trying to wrap this up so that they can get a new version of this out for the 24-25 school year. And Nancy Bernard. Nancy has been the lead at Department of Health for environmental school health for many years, and Nancy is preparing to retire this summer, and so she is trying hard to get as many things completed as she can before she leaves her position. And so that's one of the reasons why we have a pretty tight deadline to give her input. And regardless of, whether you can or not, I just want you to be aware of the fact that this tool is going to be revised. It has many, many components in it. And so it will be, for the next coming school year, a good reference for you to use. And we'll talk about it more as it becomes available in completed format. Just a reminder about the Washington DOH school information page. So this is where you could see examples. You can see my lovely circles here to highlight what's happening now and your key resources. Those are really areas that you want to watch because that's where they're going to put out announcements. So you can see there your K through 12 health and safety guide review. So there's the reminder about that particular tool. You've already received all of your COVID-19 updates, your wear naloxone for Washington public high schools. Those things have been out for a little bit, but the newest item on there is really the K through 12 health and safety guide. So more to come on from Washington DOH all summer long. It's really a time for a lot of review and revision to many, many tools. Okay, some quick updates from WABON. So the Washington Board of Nursing also is quite busy. As you might recall, they announced their multi-state license work, and multi-state licenses are now available for RNs in Washington. And of course, that brings up a number of different issues, one of them being out-of-state field trips. And so they've looked at, how are we going to manage out-of-state field trips for nurses who do have multi-state licenses and nurses who don't have multi-state licenses. And so they are putting out new guidance. And some of this comes out to you. This is really more kind of an FYI. Some of these things come out to you as like advisory opinions from the Washington Board of Nursing. Anytime there is a revision to one of those documents, we will send it to you and, add any clarification to it. So you don't have to go searching for these items. We will share them broadly as soon as they're completed. So just know that that's coming. If you do have one of the reminders though, is if you have a multi-state license and you're going on field trips, it's still the nurse's responsibility. If you're moving out of Washington state and you're going to another state, you need to be checking in with that state as far as what are their rules around delegation, for example, within because you are going to fall under their state guidance. You're still going to be needing to follow whatever requirements are set by that state in terms of school nursing practice. So if you have questions about that, please let me know, or go directly to Washington Board of Nursing and ask, because they're always looking for input from school nurses as well as other nurses on practice information. Reminder from them about their health equity training. Blood glucose testing rules are going to be updated, but they're not out. So as these things are produced, we will be sharing them. So again, these are just more things that they are working on. Sometimes the Washington Board of Nursing actually does an advisory opinion, and sometimes they do not. So sometimes they just use what they refer to as commonly asked questions. Most of us used to always call these FAQs, but these have transitioned to commonly asked questions. So sometimes you're not going to find what you're looking for in a printed advisory. You will be able to go to the commonly asked questions website, and there are hundreds. I mean, there's so many questions out there, and they try to answer everything and put it out there so that, one person's question is often 20 other people's question. And so you can find it out there in many cases. And if you can't, that's another reason why it's good to talk with the WABON team. And there's always contact information available on their webpage, so you can connect with them directly. So changes coming around blood glucose testing, changes coming around enteral tube feedings, and RN delegation. And these are the three that I highlighted. There's many others, but these three actually are going to have some impact on school services. And so we're really always looking at what kind of information is WABON putting out that really reflects school nursing, and we'll be sharing that with you. Events and training page for them. And here's our lovely school nurse. I wanted to share some photos from our school nurse day. So here we are getting ready to do some Stop the Bleed training. WABON does have events and training. So just as a reminder, their jurisprudence module is available to you free of charge on their website. Just keep in mind that with summer coming, there's going to be updates and revisions to that course. So they are in the process of doing that. And they also have an introductory program available for you there as well. A lot of updates get done during the summer months. And so the School Nurse Corps nurse administrator team has a long list of things that we need to review and revise over the summer months. So these are just two examples. Your online guides, as you know, are available to you on the North Central ESD School Nurse website. So you can click right into the links to online guides. It'll take you into the School Nurse Resource Guide and the Student Health Services Resource Guide. Those are both electronic manuals, and they're excellent resources for you. We update them every year. And of course, now we're in the process of updating them for next school year. So that's in process. There is a new multi-state license information that was put out by the administrative team, and there's a link to the document here. It's just a document to help clarify any questions people might have about the RN multi-state license and school nursing practice. And Healthy Students Achieve. This is a new website that has been launched, and it is all about school nursing. It serves kind of multiple purposes. One is to entice people into school nursing and why they might want to transition into school nursing as a role. And then the other is to provide some support resources for school nurses. So there is a link there to that. And then we're working on different guidelines that are already have not actually been in place for a while. Care plan guidelines, how to create care plans for students, seizure guidelines, and special education health assessments. Those are all new, and our goal is to have those ready to go for next school year. Quick reminder, we talked about this last month, still hearing rumors that there may be a delay in EpiPen delivery. So as you're cleaning out your medications, please make sure that you hold on to any EpiPens. We may get an announcement about the extension of these expiring pens if indeed there is some kind of delay in practice, as we have in the past. So that would not be new to us, but it's just make sure that you do have some of those available. Quick end of year tasks. If you're a member of School Nurse Corps, please make sure that you submit your professional development hours form to Sheila so that we make sure that your school is reimbursed for your professional development hours. Even if you haven't hit your 32-hour mark for the year, please submit it by the first week of June because we want to make sure your school is reimbursed. If you have not yet done your performance evaluation, then this is a good time to prep for that. You can pull in information from a variety of sources, including your district assessment data, your site visit data, any work that you've done with Lena, for example, your goals and objectives. Those types of things are really important to make sure to include when you're doing your performance evaluation with particularly those of you who are reporting to a non-licensed administrator at the schools. So we encourage you to bring in proofs of competency, and those are examples that you can use. If you'd like more help with that, please reach out to us and we'd be happy to help you. Rescinding delegation, just a reminder to make sure you fill out your rescinding delegation form. If you're not going to be covering summer school, you're going to want to make sure to do that. Return your meds, accept your epi, check your naloxone dates, make sure you have equipment calibration dates set up so that all your equipment gets calibrated, and then your ID, your 24 and 25 delegatees at your district. So you have a plan in place for your 24-25 unlicensed assistive personnel who are going to serve as your medication administrators or other tasks, and you can line up their training now for August when you return to school. Here we are. Look at what a great time. We had a wonderful time at this event. So people are sharing lots of quality improvement ideas for school nursing. So upcoming training, I want you to be aware of. We already talked about the May 30th date for immunization updates from Catherine Graff. So that will be coming May 30th. Also on May 30th is School Nurse Connects. This is our meeting with Department of Health. And so this next one from 3 to 4 o'clock is going to focus on updates to the infectious control guidelines. So another manual that's going to be revised, and they're looking for input on the draft. You can register for that here if you're able to attend and provide input to that. Best School Nurse Mentors training. We have 2 more dates coming up. One is June 10th and the second one is August 12th. And we're already looking ahead to next year to continuing roundtables. So we're going to have roundtable dates set up soon, as well as additional training sessions for the next school year. So if you are a best trainer now, or you have an interest in just completing this program because you want to become better or more skilled in mentoring others, then anyone is welcome to attend one of these sessions. Other upcoming programs, make sure that if you have new nurses coming into your agency this school year, that August 14th and 15th are going to be our orientation dates. So the orientation will be in Wenatchee at North Central ESD. We also have the annual school nurse workshop on August 16th. That's provided by Providence out of Spokane. It's always an excellent workshop, and they do offer that remotely. Finally, the Snow Conference, just as a quick reminder, Snow Conference will be live in the fall as usual. And this year it's in Wenatchee. So we're thrilled to be one of the co-sponsors of this event and looking forward to seeing as many people attend this event as possible. We've got some great speakers planned for this, and looking forward to seeing everybody there who can attend. And finally, some changes to school nurse positions. You know, I'm only going to post a few things on here that we are 100% aware of. There's also, we're waiting for some finalization from some districts about what the changes we can expect, but Okanagan School District is going to be posting a full-time position here. It is excellent. It is going to be a wonderful opportunity for somebody to move into a full-time job with that district. And so as soon as that's posted, we'll get that information out to you, but they're just finalizing it right now. Oroville has already welcomed a new school nurse. So we've got Tanya Reynolds. She's going to be doing a little bit of overlap up there in the district with Olivia. So welcome to Tanya. And thank you, Olivia, for your year of service that you provided to that school district. And then as a reminder, if you know of openings or you anticipate some changes, whether those are leaving a position or if you're going to be exiting a position just on a leave of absence or any extended period of time, to please let us know. We are in the process of tracking hours and school nurse days, and we anticipate that there are going to be some reductions across school districts. We know they're already happening, and we are keeping track of all of those so that we have a good idea of what's happening with school nursing in our region. All right. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing and again say thank you for the wonderful year that we've had, and then turn this back over to Lena and Dr. Wilson.
Thank you, Kathy. Again, I wanted to echo Kathy and thank you, all school nurses for a wonderful year. And we didn't have very many on at the very beginnings when I said this, but I hope you had a chance to celebrate and be celebrated on School Nurse Day, like on May 8th.
And
So
I'm sorry, I said Dr. Wilson, I meet Dr. Wallace. So blah. Dr. Wallace.
yes, well, thank you so much for those updates, Kathy. That's a lot of information for us to look into and participate in. So those are some exciting opportunities to give some input. I am going to, I see that Dr. Wallace and Dr. Walker are both on. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the time over to them and let them give us their updates and information and guidance. Thanks so much for being here with us.
Awesome. Thanks, Lene. Thanks, Kathy. Yeah, we've got Dr. Wallace, Dr. Walker. Dr. Wilson is just fine to use. I have kids in my practice that call me Dr. Walrus, so I can go by anything. Let me share my screen. I'm going to do an update for you guys on public health, and then spend the majority of our time talking about wildfire smoke because we have Dr. Walker with us, and she is a regional and state level expert. We're really fortunate to have her with us, so I don't want to take too much time. But first off, congrats for nearing the end of the school year. Strong work this year. As always, there are ups and downs, and you guys have really stepped up in your districts and throughout the region as a whole. So congrats to you guys for nearing the end of the school year. We also want to celebrate that Dr. Kristen Hosey was hired as our permanent health administrator at Chelan Douglas Health District. The board voted on that unanimously last night at their meeting. So I'm excited to share that news with you guys. She's been on this call. I know she's worked closely with the ESD in the past. She is a nurse herself, received her doctorate in nursing and public health, and worked with Wenatchee Valley College, running their public health programs, helping with the Okanagan campus before stepping into the deputy administrator role about a year ago with Chelan Douglas Health District. And then when Luke Davies stepped down, she's been the interim health administrator. So we're very excited to have her at the helm of our organization now. So when you do see her, get to interact with her, please extend congratulations. I'm going to share some on respiratory illness, update you guys on pertussis. We had a good notifiable diseases presentation that I know many of you attended on measles. So I wanted to share a little bit about that, as well as vaccine preventable illnesses in general, and talk with you about some of the work we're doing to prepare for summer, and then pass the baton to Dr. Walker. We're fortunately at a 3-year low for most of our respiratory illnesses. So COVID, RSV, influenza, not seeing much of it, and are in a very fortunate spot. Hope we remain this way for quite a while. Healthcare systems are under kind of their routine respiratory precautions. I know you guys are using routine respiratory illness and general illness policies. And we're continuing to watch for notifiable conditions as they pop up. So pertussis has been one of those that many of us have been busy with. We've discussed it before. Unfortunately, we're not seeing as many cases as we did in March and February. So reports are waning, but to date, we've got 82 confirmed or probable cases, still with cases detected among 8 schools. But know that there's broader community spread because we don't see linkages between a lot of schools, even within schools, and have a high number of cases that are have risen just from the general public. We only have 2 cases of kids less than 1 year of age. And as I'll discuss in just a little bit, the age distribution that we're seeing, more middle school and high school age kids, a low severity of illness, and this transmission pattern without as much transmission as we would expect, suggests to us that the vaccine is having a positive impact. Statewide, there's an increase in pertussis cases. So 183 as of the first week of May, compared to 24 cases on the same date in 2023. We're certainly contributing to the majority of those cases, or to a large number of those cases, but there are nearly 100 cases spread across 16 other counties. There are more cases outside of Chelan-Douglas among kids less than 1 year of age, and almost 50% of those cases on a state level are in kids less than 10 years of age. So a little bit different than what we're seeing. I think we're familiar with the timeline for our cases, but got notified by a school nurse. I'm reminding everyone of our first case because it was not reported by healthcare. It was reported by the strong work of a school nurse who recognized that it should be something public health was attuned to. Shortly thereafter, we had our first lab confirmed case, and then started seeing second, third schools that weren't linked to the first, and then a number of cases in the community that weren't linked to any other known cases. So to date, as I said, 8 schools have seen more than 1 case, and we have a total of 82 cases. Rates much higher than the other counties that are reporting cases. I want to highlight just a couple of important bits of information from the data we have been able to collect. That is that among our schools, there are more cases that we're seeing in middle and high schools than in elementary schools. More often, the elementary schools that are involved oftentimes have a case or 2 that can be traced back to a sibling in a middle or high school. And then consistent with that, we've seen more cases in that 11 to 19-year-old age group than other ages. And then interestingly, and I think it bears more discussion, 75% of the cases that we've seen are completely up to date on the acellular pertussis vaccine, whether it's the DTaP that kids get as their primary series, or the Tdap booster that kids get at 11 to 12 years of age. So take-home points we have in analyzing our cases. There's much more pertussis out there than we're detecting. So the lack of epi links it makes it clear to us that that it's circulating more broadly. it's being detected through the good work that you all are doing by recognizing illness and excluding and advising kids to seek care. But that transmission is really occurring more broadly. And when we dig into cases, we're seeing that there's less transmission going on within schools and more often transmission going on in households, at sleepovers, or where kids are more closely confined for more amount of time than they are in schools or school-related activity. And we do see the impact of the vaccine. So we see a lower severity of illness than we would suspect for a full-blown pertussis outbreak without vaccine protection. We see a lower attack rate, or the number of people that are infected by one individual who has pertussis is lower than would be expected without the vaccine. The older age distribution suggests to us that that vaccine is more effective at preventing transmission among younger kids who are closer to that primary series. And the milder symptoms, because of lower severity, makes it harder to diagnose it, because oftentimes pertussis just presents as a mild upper respiratory infection, doesn't have the classic symptoms, and so it can be easily missed. So a good question about, is the vaccine having an impact or not? The 75% vaccination rate among our cases is about equal to the vaccination rate for Chelan and Douglas counties among the impacted age groups when you look at the Washington immunization database. That varies a little bit from the school reported database because of differences in data and tracking. But we learned a lot, and it's been published. I put a link here from the large outbreak epidemic level of pertussis activity in 2012, where the state saw 2,500 cases compared to just 180 in the year prior. Vaccination rates were similar to what we're seeing. So 75% in that 3-month to 10-year-old age group who should be up to date on their DTaP vaccines. And then that booster, the Tdap booster, should be given at 11 to 12 years old. There's a low adherence to that immediate vaccination, but oftentimes by 18 or 19 years of age, there's better coverage, so 77% once kids got into the older age groups. In 2012, we did see a higher incidence than expected among adolescents aged 13 to 14 years old. And so that led to a lot of inquiry into the vaccine-mediated immunity and the particular characteristics of the acellular vaccine, which at that time we were just exploring, and since then have learned a lot more about. So there was a big change from the initial pertussis vaccines that were offered in the mid-1980s. And by the middle 2000s, all vaccines offered were no longer the whole cell pertussis vaccine and are now always given as an acellular pertussis vaccine. That change was made in the 80s and 90s because the whole cell pertussis vaccine resulted in a lot of fevers, a lot of irritability among kids. And talking with folks that were around and practicing medicine during that time, parents were very upset at how irritable the kids would be and what those common effects of the vaccine were. And so instead of offering the whole cell vaccine, that vaccine got changed to an acellular or antigenic vaccine. And it doesn't confer as much protection for as long a period of time, which is why the series has been changed now to get 5 doses of Tdap within the first 5 years of life, and then a booster dose, 5 doses of DTaP in the first 5 years of life, and then a Tdap booster at 11 to 12 years old, a Tdap booster once during adulthood, and then a Tdap booster during each and every pregnancy that an individual has. And that strategy is designed to protect the most vulnerable individuals, knowing that vaccine immunity is going to wane. It's really trying to target the vaccine to protect the most highly sensitive individuals at the most important time. We talked about measles at our notifiable conditions talk at the beginning of the month. I appreciate so many of you guys being there. Short story is that measles cases are on the rise. We declared measles eradicated from the United States in about 2000. But since then, with a lot of political and social instability in countries that didn't reach eradication status, measles is on the rebound and most often seen among travelers who are not vaccinated to and from areas where it's still circulating in endemic levels. So Europe, Asia, Africa see a lot of measles, and so travelers oftentimes bring it back with them. It usually spreads from unvaccinated travelers to unvaccinated individuals in communities. And we see cyclical increases. And so in Washington State, 2012, 2015, and 2019 saw a lot of cases. We had folks from Clark County come and present to us who had experience with several measles outbreaks. If you're paying attention to the news in 2024, we've seen a lot of measles reported in Chicago and Philadelphia, most notably, but Clark County as well as Spokane County have reported cases. They've done a great job at responding. And so part of the reason I wanted this presentation for our health jurisdiction was to get healthcare partners and folks that might come across measles as it first presents ready and prepared, because the immediate response should be isolation of those individuals and further investigation. The challenge of measles is that the individuals with measles are infectious 4 days before that classic rash begins. And so again, another illness that can present as a fever, upper respiratory symptoms. It's not until 4 days after the individual is contagious that the rash that we commonly associate with measles presents itself. It's a highly severe illness in children less than 5 years of age. So a lot of the work that we do, whether it's in vaccination, investigation, isolation and quarantine, is protecting from the severe complications, especially in younger kids. Fortunately, the MMR vaccine is 97% effective, unlike the pertussis vaccine that has waning immunity. So keeping to the regular schedule with MMR really prevents the majority of transmission. Because it's so contagious and because unvaccinated individuals are highly susceptible, we do isolate contacts of cases who are not vaccinated. So that's different than a lot of other illnesses where if you're exposed, you can still go about your daily activities unless you come down with symptoms. Both individuals who are identified as cases and infected with measles, as well as their contacts, are advised to isolate. Leads me to ask, we see some variation among counties and school districts in immunization status. So I'd love to hear from the group, take questions or thoughts about how our health districts can support you guys in maintaining really high immunization rates and protect your kiddos. I'll wait to take questions though until I wrap up, to save a little bit of time. The health district is pretty active in preparing for some of the illnesses we see more commonly in the summertime. Rabies, I threw this up there and it makes me realize that some of the recommendations we make should be in that list of things you learn in kindergarten. One of which should be don't touch bats. Bats carry more rabies than any other animal around. And in fact, we've only had 5 cases of rabies in the state in animals other than bats. I think there have been 2 cats, 1 dog, a horse, and a llama. in the past 5 years that have had rabies, and only 2 humans have contracted rabies in the past 75 years. Best prevention is avoiding animals, especially those that are acting abnormally. Most domestic animals, fortunately, receive vaccination, and then individuals that have risk for higher exposure get vaccines. That's usually an occupational risk. For folks working with wildlife and working like in veterinary offices. We want people to seek care immediately after washing any wound with soap and water, and then connecting with us enables us to activate the public health response, support healthcare, and getting appropriate post-exposure prophylaxis to individuals, and then working with animal control or wildlife to identify the source and try and contain that. We see a lot of heat. It affects folks of extreme ages. I especially worry about our outdoor workers and when heat rolls around. And so we're working with a lot of community partners to make sure we're prepared this year. North Central Washington Libraries, I'm sure as many of you know, throughout the region, does a great job at making cooling centers available. And so a lot of our communications will be around helping folks seek shelter and avoid big heat waves we see this summer. I'm not going to speak much about our severe smoke events and steal Dr. Walker's thunder, but it's been something we've been preparing for over the past year, and are really excited to each year make improvements to our preparedness. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And I guess I missed one slide about foodborne illness preparedness. We've already responded to one foodborne illness outbreak with salmonella that was most likely associated with a gathering. And so we're working with DOH on responding to identify what the source of that illness was, and setting up precautions and eliminating future contamination of food sources there. But we do a lot of permitting for temporary food licenses with all the celebrations and activities in the summertime. And so our environmental health teams are especially active in food safety. So I'm going to stop there. Let's see, I hope I wasn't signed out of the meeting. I'm going to stop sharing. Looks like I'm still here. Can take any questions real quick, but I don't want to steal time from Dr. Walker. Actually, looking at the time, let's go ahead and let Dr. Walker do her presentation, then we can talk more.
Sounds good. Thank you, Dr. Wallace. I'm ready to bring the thunder here. There's no stealing the thunder, but I hope this is exciting for everybody. Can everyone see my screen okay? Great.
Yep.
So thanks so much. I think this is the second time that I've been invited to speak with this group, and I do have some slides for us to go over. I predominantly put this deck together as a resource for you. There are several links within that you might find helpful for future reference. I would invite questions or discussion at any point along the presentation, but I believe that we've got, I think, the rest of the meeting. So I do hope that if there are any questions, we can make sure to have a good discussion about that. So I'm looking outside my window right now on this nice, cool, overcast day. We've been getting some moisture here this morning. I imagine many of you are seeing the same thing. But if I think back just to a couple of weeks ago when we had that heat wave, I know on a lot of people's mind was already thinking about our early spring and that it was heating up already, and the beginnings of just sort of that nervous anxiety about what the fire and smoke season is going to bring. And I named that just because we recognize that this impact of living in a disaster-prone area where we have wildfire and wildfire smoke on an annual basis is indeed something that can impact people's mental health and well-being, and something I think it's helpful for us to name and address, and really think about strategies for building resiliency to our reality so that we can both accept the reality of this beautiful place that we get to live in and everything that comes with it. And really thinking about focusing in on preparedness and information sharing, and what strengths we possess and maybe need to build so that we can continue to live in a healthy way with this fire-prone ecosystem. So specific to all of your phenomenal roles in protecting children and youth during wildfire smoke, I'm going to focus just some remarks about how kids are especially sensitive to wildfire smoke, go over a little bit of the changes in the Washington DOH Children's Activity Guidance, and then offer a couple other resources. But as I said, I'd really love to also hear from you about what wildfire smoke looks like at your schools, and again, what you might need to help support you in your role as school nurses. And I just want to call up front Julie Fox, who has been leading up the air quality as well as wildfire smoke work at Washington DOH, contributed several slides to this, and she's been a phenomenal thought partner ongoing. For those of you who I don't know, I actually really like to do my own introduction by acknowledging the learning communities and all of the incredible individuals and groups that have helped shape my thinking and taught me a lot over the last decade plus in working in North Central Washington in air quality and health, and specifically in wildfire smoke, as that has become much more of a prominent public health concern for all of us. So you'll see I spent about a decade working in a community-based organization and growing that program, first in the Methow Valley and then Okanagan County. But if you scroll down to the end of that list, for about the last 9 months, I've been working almost exclusively with local health jurisdictions and really trying to help think about what capacity we need to build, what vision, in thinking about health impacts of climate change, which are really fire, smoke, and heat here right now, although there are several others we're likely going to need to think about into the future. I want to also just name and acknowledge that a lot of our community, and maybe many of you, often really kind of starts with smoke. What is the big deal? Why are we spending so much time? I mean, air quality is definitely having its moment right now. And we have a really high cultural tolerance. Wildfire and smoke have been around for a long time in our region. But I think there is indeed a reason that we want to be thinking more carefully about exposure reduction. And that's that it's not just the impacts of these severe smoke episodes that we're seeing more frequently on physical and mental health, but also sort of the broader impacts on our economic, social, community health, et cetera. We are well documented that our severe smoke episodes and increases in exposure to PM 2.5 lead to increases in all-cause mortality, in addition to many other pretty serious conditions that we're worried about. These are often concurrent with extreme summer heat, our smoke episodes, and that is the first hazard that we need to pay attention to. So we don't necessarily, if we're thinking about creating clean indoor air spaces, we can't do that at the expense of creating a suffocatingly hot environment that's going to harm people first. But, you know, these last two bullet points down here is that we really don't know what the full health impact of experiencing several weeks to months of heavy wildfire smoke every year, such as our region does, what the full health impact down the road is going to look like. But we do know that our fires and smoke are unfortunately going to get worse. And our projections are that our severe smoke episodes will increase 2 to 3-fold by the year 2050, which is really just kind of right around the corner. And we know that there are vulnerable populations that are definitely more sensitive to the impacts of smoke, and that children are one of those. And, you know, when we think about our kiddos, they are spending often the whole first 18 years of their life in that vulnerable category and potentially experiencing wildfire smoke year after year after year. Again, our body of evidence is growing that what we often observe are exacerbation of asthma, but also that we expect that smoke is now contributing to the development of asthma, as well as making kids more susceptible to respiratory infection, as well as reduced lung function and impacts on their lung development. There's growing evidence that we are also potentially looking at declines in academic performance and cognitive decline, potentially neurodevelopmental disorders, contribution to pediatric cancers, And again, for these long-term exposures, increased risk for adult chronic disease. So by having these early lifetime exposures, we're setting kids up for the development of diseases further down the road. And so given where we live, and also the inevitability, again, of wildfire and wildfire smoke, I think it really behooves us to think about what types of exposure reduction strategies and how much exposure reduction really makes good sense to make sure that our kids have bright and healthy futures. So just a couple of brief slides about why kids are more sensitive, because this is probably a review for everyone, but their inhalation rates are higher than adults. The respiratory systems are still developing, and kids are mouth breathers more than nasal breathers, which means that they're pulling more smoky air when it is smoky outside down further into their lungs. They're also more active than we are. Any of us that spend time around children or have them of ourselves, we know this. And when they are more active, they start to breathe both more deeply as well as more rapidly. And, you know, in high intensity activities, it's a significant increase in that inhalation rate. And so when when it's smoky air outside, this means that, again, we're pulling more PM 2.5 deeper down into the lungs. This is a nice table from the CDC that I think helps just give us some real concrete examples about what we mean by the difference between light, moderate, and vigorous activity. You can think about casting your eye out onto a playground or thinking about athletics and other things that kids might be participating in. And Washington DOH took these different categorizations of light, moderate, and vigorous activity into their consideration when they sort of dramatically reshaped this Washington Children and Youth Activities Guide for air quality last year. So this is the 2023 that you're looking at here. I understand from Julie that there might be some very slight updates to this. They're always thinking about continual improvement based on feedback, but those have not been released yet, and there won't be any major changes. But I hope that last year this was a useful tool for you. And if it wasn't, again, I think Julie and her group are very receptive to your feedback on it. But the changes that DOH made last year were to break the activity duration down into 15 minutes to 1 hour, 1 to 4 hours, and then greater than 4 hours. And then speak to what level of activity that was recommended for children at different categories of air quality. So again, maybe in our discussion, we could have some feedback about whether this matrix was useful for you. I think in my discussions with athletic directors and some others, I think this was very helpful for them to think about the distinctions between, okay, it's kind of smoky outside, let me go check the air quality and see, you know, what we might want to recommend for recess versus then thinking about after school practices versus thinking about athletic events like games or overnight or field trips that were going to be taking place outside. On the back of this front sheet, there's also on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see more details as well as some links to give some more detail here about this activity guide. And then there were 3 new appendices that were also developed. These really speak to our key elements now in our advice about how to reduce exposure to wildfire smoke. The first is knowing how to actually understand how smoky it is outside. Looking for air quality data is not as straightforward as we would like it to be. It can be kind of challenging to look. And so we're trying to get people to all look in the same place, which is airnow.gov, to look at what air quality might be in real time or otherwise. And then also to think about how to improve indoor air quality. Our major recommendation is often to either reduce children's activity levels when it's smoky or to move them into cleaner air spaces. So how do we know that our indoor air is actually cleaner? Washington DOH is giving some guidance here about how to both improve it as well as how to monitor either outdoor or indoor air quality. So again, I'm a big fan of this guidance. I've helped over the last several years develop it and solicited feedback from some of you even on this call. So as I said, this is always a work in progress. So we'd love your feedback on how this is helping you in your roles. And then there's also a frequently asked questions document that accompanies this. And all these are linked in one of the slides, so you can go and read these in more detail. But I know that DOH has received some feedback that these frequently asked questions have also been really helpful too in getting more specific into scenarios where you're trying to determine what the best actions are to take with kids during smoke events. And here are your links right here. All right, so I wanted to take just a moment and talk about what we might be thinking about for this summer and fall. I know in Okanagan County, we frequently have the opening of school coinciding with some severe smoke from wildfires. I think that we should all really consider preparing for that. That is a high likelihood event for any of us, that we are going to be opening school during potentially severe smoke. So this slide is compliments of my friend and colleague, Matt Deere at the Washington DNR. He's their lead smoke meteorologist. And I've highlighted here the bottom line that I want to put forward to us, which is the good news that we are not expecting an exceptional or particularly bad fire season this year in our region. However, even under normal conditions, we have a pretty significant wildfire season. He clarified that by Eastern Washington, he means anything east of the Cascades. And as we know, even if we don't have fires in our backyard, smoke can travel from very far away. So I think it's, I mean, I appreciate knowing that we aren't necessarily expecting extreme fire potential in our own area this year, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to get smoke, or at least some fires. Okay, and so I just wanted to offer this as more of a discussion standpoint. You can see in that photo right there, this is a first day of school at Metro Valley School District, I believe in 2022. I don't know how familiar this might look to some of you, but again, I think we can expect and hopefully prepare for the worst, and then we'll see where we go from there. But some of the things that the Metro Valley School District has done to try to keep students and the school community safe in poor air quality episodes include drafting, continually updating, and then training staff on a school-specific air quality guideline that both references that Washington State children in school activity guidance, but sort of brings out salient points about how the school itself is going to be protecting kids from air quality. They also have an interdisciplinary air quality team. This has been more or less formal or informal across different years, but the goal of this group, which includes the superintendent, school leadership, facilities staff, the school nurse, as well as the athletic director, is to really think about that air quality policy and make sure everyone's familiar with it, and to try to meet before school opens to make sure that preparations have been taking place and that everybody knows what's going on and is on the same page. I would advocate that school nurses can be a really critical part of that team, if not the instigating factor for asking your schools to form something like that if you don't already. These schools have a purple air monitor placed outside so that they can monitor real-time air quality on their campus itself. That's quite useful. In this instance, these schools actually do have 2 regulatory monitors that the Department of Ecology maintains, not too far away, but that purple air monitor is giving them even more specific to the space where the kids are going to be active conditions, and that can be really valuable. They're also conducting indoor air sampling during wildfire smoke events to help them identify any problem areas in their building, as well as to confirm when they're bringing kids inside during recess or relocating athletic practices that those kids are indeed actually in cleaner air spaces, which is really critical. And then the facility staff have worked really hard to maximize the existing capacities of the buildings by making sure they're changing out their MERV filters routinely, placing the highest rated MERV filter as possible on there, and then supplementing with portable HEPA air cleaners in classrooms and active spaces as needed. And then they've done about a bunch of outreach. So I've done a podcast with them. We routinely do emailed communications. We've done a live Q&A session for parents and staff community. And the goal here, and I do think the result to a large extent, is really building a culture of awareness about wildfire smoke, air quality, and how it's impacting our kids, to really stimulate an educated discussion about how to balance the benefits and risks of things like children's physical activity and participation in team sports and contact with nature, which we know are all very beneficial to their health and development, but also, again, acknowledging where are the places where we can reduce exposure to severe wildfire smoke. So with that, there's just a couple more references in here for you. The Washington Smoke Blog can be a really nice place to learn more about this. This is something that's continually updated during wildfire smoke season and often has quite pertinent information to our communities in North Central Washington, forecasts and otherwise. And then this is more just an FYI. Some of you may have heard that there are updates to the air quality index in response to our growing body of evidence about the health risks of particulate matter. And I didn't start there with the basics, but when I say PM 2.5, I'm referring to particulate matter. 2.5 microns or smaller in size. This is our predominant pollutant of concern in wildfire smoke. These really tiny particles that are inhaled deep into the lung can cause a lot of inflammation. In response to a growing body of evidence that it's even worse for us than previously anticipated at lower concentrations, the Environmental Protection Agency has actually revised the air quality index, or revised the levels of air pollution that are considered okay for us to breathe, to a more conservative fashion. So the thresholds that are impacted there are between the categorization of air quality as good or moderate. So basically, we will go into a yellow category sooner than we would have at lower levels of pollution starting this year. This went into effect in April. And then they didn't touch any of the breakpoints between yellow and unhealthy for sensitive groups or unhealthy for everyone, but they also revised downwards, more conservative, the breakpoint between unhealthy, very unhealthy, as well as the breakpoint between very unhealthy and hazardous. So again, this is more just an FYI for you. This isn't necessarily anything that you need to understand more deeply than what you're seeing right here, I guess, is what I'd say. If you're curious, certainly you're invited to go in and read more. I don't know if Adri Van Bianchi is on the phone, but she's at Metro Valley School District, and I let her know that if she was present today, she was certainly welcome to share any thoughts about the example that I provided from her school. But I would really love to hear from all of you in the remaining time we have, what your concerns are, if any, about wildfire smoke and your role as a school nurse. And then I have a few other questions, but maybe we could start right there. And Dr. Wallace, certainly if there's anything else you want to add, please do.
Well, I would just like to put in to promote some work that Lena has been involved with the EPA in regards to purple air monitor distribution. We've identified some areas that do not currently have purple air monitors, and she has been reaching out to school districts. The EPA is making them available to Lena free of charge, and are happy to help school districts in getting these set up. But we do have some wide swaths of our region that don't have coverage. So if she's reaching out to you and asking you about this program, it is free, and we can certainly get one for you and help you with the setup for air monitor in your school district.
That's fantastic to hear, Lena and Kathy. My next question that I was pausing on was how many of you are measuring outdoor air quality at your schools currently? So again, I would love to see all of our schools with a monitor on campus. I'd also like to put the caveat in there that while the purple air monitors are a wonderful low-cost tool that are incredibly precise, they are inaccurate, and you must apply a conversion factor, which is right integrated into the app itself or to the website when you're looking at that data. But if you do not apply the US EPA conversion factor, you're highly likely to be overestimating the levels of pollution that it's reading. And so that's just a really critical piece. And there are also some other things that you can adjust with the box on the Purple Air website regarding the time series averaging. So whether you're looking at real time, a 30-minute average, a 1-hour average, etc. So there are just a couple of those little extra steps that are really important when you're looking at those numbers and thinking about what steps you might need to take to protect student health. So I hope that you will all take advantage of that program, though, and put a monitor up on your campus.
Dr. Walker, Adriana mentioned in the chat that she is here from the Met House, from the Met Valley School District. Adriana, are you able to unmute and talk?
Sure. Hi, this is Adriana. Thank you, Liz. That was an amazing presentation. And also, I would say that I contact Liz a lot during smoke season with questions because it is all still super, well, it's scary and it feels super unhealthy and it's really complicated. And so it sounds like we work really hard up here to make good decisions, and we also reach out for help a lot, and to make sure that we're, making the right decision and interpreting the data correctly. I encourage others to do the same also, to reach out for help.
Thanks, AJ. Yeah, as I said about looking at air quality data, it's not as easy as we all wish it was, and it can take some learning together. And yes, there's lots of support to offer that to make sure that those numbers are making sense and that matrix that we were looking at is being applied in a way that you feel confident about that to protect kids' health. I guess if I could, and I don't know if you all can maybe just, I'm trying to go to a different view so I can see you. So could we do a quick, and I didn't ask for your survey tools. I know you you offered this, Lena, but I'm just gonna maybe if people could give a thumbs up. How many of you are aware that your school is monitoring outdoor air quality currently? I'm trying to go back to my view so that I can see all of you. Can we get a thumbs up if you know, or some other reaction if you know that your school is monitoring outdoor air quality?
Sometimes the nurses will put it in the chat as well. So if you don't see a thumbs up from them, there might be something in the chat going in too.
How many of
You
you?
might stop your share.
Okay, great. So you all see each other. I've got too much. I guess maybe I could do it this way. How many of you don't know whether or not you're monitoring air quality currently? Or maybe it's challenging to get to some sort of reaction. I know this has been a really, it's been sort of an ongoing and tricky thing in thinking about monitoring. As I said, it's not entirely the most approachable thing, but I think it isn't impossible either. And I think that it's something that we can all start to do in thinking about the importance of indoor air quality. Obviously, during COVID, this was another big thing. The benefits of cleaning indoor air are much broader than just thinking about wildfire smoke. We can think about transmission of respiratory illness. We can think about just decline in allergens that are present in learning spaces. I mean, there's a lot of good evidence overall that indoor air quality contributes to a healthier learning environment in a much broader sense. So again, as nurses, thank you so much for your attention and potential advocacy on this topic. Thank you. Okay, any other questions for Dr. Wallace or myself?
Oh, sorry. Just from the chat, I saw that over in Moses Lake, Jen McKee is monitoring the air quality and that they do also in Ephrata. And Shelley Zem gave a thumbs up. Amber over in Kashmir mentioned that I don't think we are, but we were approached about one of those monitors. And then Amanda, they use local monitors. Grand Coulee mentioned that she's not sure. And then one of the nurses said that she didn't know that they were monitoring the air quality until another nurse in her district gave a thumbs up. So that is being done. And then up in Pascal Sherman, they have an air monitor as well. Some of the questions are how close should those monitors be located to the schools? Some of them have air monitors that they're following like on the airnow.gov, but they aren't they're up in a canyon or in a neighboring city that's not maybe like 15 minutes away. So what would be something you could speak to on that? Excuse me.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've, really loved these low cost sensors for making air quality so relevant and truly hyper local. Depending on the topography and geography and predominant air weather patterns of an area, you may have a regulatory monitor or someone else's purple air sensor that could be, even as close as a couple of miles away. But if it's over a hill where you have predominantly weather systems or smoke coming down a drainage that doesn't impact the school or vice versa, that monitor may or may not be very representative of what's happening on your campus. So these purple air monitors are literally this big. And there are some instructions for the best way to place these, but basically it's a combination of wanting them to be sheltered from any kind of weather like snow or rain or otherwise. So underneath an eave of some kind, but then also so that it is getting good airflow into the device itself, which is how it's measuring the air quality. So for instance, the one on the Liberty Bell High School's campus is on one of the dugouts, the back of the dugout for a baseball field. We thought a little bit about dust that gets kicked up from the actual baseball diamond itself, but it's on the back side, so away from that. But, that's sort of a good example of where you may want to place those.
I have a question for you, Dr. Walker. Are there advantages or disadvantages to having a monitor that isn't necessarily linked to the airnow.gov?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So there definitely are. So those correction factors that I mentioned that need to be applied when you set up a purple air monitor, you have an option of either making it publicly or privately accessible. So if you do make it publicly accessible so that it's visible on the purple air map, you have to go in and manually add that US EPA conversion factor, make sure you're looking at the right time series, the right pollutant, etc. If you set it up, and set it up publicly, the default will be that once it's been reporting data for a certain amount of time, and I believe it is about 3 months or so, EPA's AirNow website will begin to include it on their website by default. When they do that, they are now running sort of a background algorithm on the data so that you no longer have to make that conversion factor a manual step to go in. So you can sort of test this, the same purple air monitor on the purple air website versus EPA Air Now. You can see that it's, placed in the same geographic location. If you click on it, the numbers won't necessarily match up. And that's why, is because EPA is trying to simplify and streamline by basically doing those data calculations in the background before it ever shows up in the publicly accessible spot. That is the main reason why those of us in the sort of air quality world are trying to send everyone to airnow.gov to look at their data there, because there's no additional steps necessary. Everything's already sort of in what you're looking at. You still get the ability to look at the data in slightly different ways. If you click on a particular monitor, you can look at, like for instance, the last 72 hours and a graph of what that looks like. But on that EPA Air Now website, that's where you will get sort of everything wrapped into the backgrounds, and basically what's called a nowcast methodology for, it's not exactly real-time data, but it's relevant air quality numbers for applying that Washington DOH guidance that you want to.
Thank you.
I feel like every year we learn more, and I really appreciate that growth and knowledge. It's easy to talk about it now, but in August and September, sometimes it's a whole different experience. I wonder if it'd be helpful to just go ahead and put an agenda item in this meeting for maybe September as a middle of the season discussion. How are people doing? What strategies have people put in place that are successful? Or, hopefully October, maybe we could have a wrap up discussion, but I don't want to jinx us.
Well, I will put it on the calendar, so I'll get back to you and you can pick which month you want to do it, but we'll make sure we bring you back so we can have a follow-up. So thank you. Are there any questions for Dr. Wallace or Dr. Walker? It is a little after 11, or just slightly after 11, so I want to make sure we honor your time, let you get back to your day. And thank you again so much for being with us, Dr. Wallace and Dr. Walker. We really appreciate the information and the care that you take to help us do our job in taking care of students.
Thanks.
Thank you so
Y'all
much.
have a great job. Very important, and appreciate you all getting through this year. Strong work.
Thank you. And again, thank you, school nurses, for all that you do. This is our last school nurse meeting for this 23-24 school year. So we'll be happy to have you back with us for the next school year. And again, if you are wanting to have clock hours for the meeting, please make sure that you have, make sure that you're, well, Sheila has taken your attendance, but make sure that you fill out that PD Enroller survey form. If you're watching this after our live Zoom is done, there is a survey for you to take so that we can know that you watched this, and that way you can still have your attendance filled out for it. If you have any questions on the process, let me know. But we just wanted to thank you again for the privilege that we have in serving you and working with you and helping your students. So thank you everyone for being with us.